Alright, so it's been 10 years since my vision of Christ, and 8 years, 7 years, 8 years that I've been on the road trying to reach the church congregation and the people in the streets and whatnot. So it's a school of hard knocks. You would think that, you saw Christ, you got anointed as a prophet, you have a new way to interpret the Bible that makes more sense than the illogical way we've been interpreting it. You would think that with all of this that you would be accepted. But Jesus definitely warned us that we would be rejected. So it's probably good to pay attention to that. And he was surely right. So my point is, though, 10 years of doing this basically, and the school of hard knocks, and it teaches you a lot. So what I found is that there's no pastor in America who will listen. And I've been trying to figure out the reason why. And I'm sitting here looking at this, I think I finally got it. So this comes after some deep contemplation. 3 Sundays ago, came into Miami and went to a church, tried to reason with the pastor, managed to get 2 conversations with them, both less than 5 minutes apiece, because shepherds are too busy these days to shepherd the flock. They have their own things to tend to, apparently. This is not just this one pastor. This is every pastor that I deal with. They just don't have time. They don't have time. And if you tell them you're a prophet, they don't want to hear it. So anyways, managed to get 2 conversations with this guy. And both times he kind of bullied me a little bit. So I was like, you know what? This is what I get from every pastor. These fruits of darkness. This fruit of the devil. So I decided that I would be proactive this time and do something different. So I went back for the 3rd Sunday, and I waited outside. And Pastor came out, and he went down to his store, and I was like, yeah, perfect setup. So I went inside the church when he left. And when he came back, the church is small. His congregation is very, very close to us. When he came back and walked in the door, I immediately got extremely loud and I looked at him and said, I'm not coming back and I'm not staying here today. And I said it loud for anybody in the whole room to hear. I wanted the attention on this situation. So his first response was, well, let's go outside. I took 2 steps towards the door, but all I did was block the doorway. And since I knew that he wanted me to go outside, I got louder because that's what he was trying to avoid. See, the best thing you can do when you're being bullied is draw attention to the situation. So I called him out very loudly and I said, no, I said, you smiled on my face and shake my hand, but you bully me in secret. And I'm saying all this very, very loud. I went on to say a couple other things, prophesying, things listed in the Bible that are sins of the people and things that would come. So I just prophesied very loudly and told him that he didn't honor me as the prophet of God. And then I walked out the door and he was looking at me with his feelings hurt as I left because he knew what I just did. I just hurt his reputation. And he knew that I did it. But, you got to bully a bully. I don't feel bad for you. The scripture says that God is unjust with the unjust. He's just with the just. In other words, if a person's giving you flack, since we're all God's in all of us, if a person's giving you flack, you don't have to lay down and take it. Is it a more noble approach? Sometimes, and only sometimes. Because sometimes it just leaves you pressed down, like a seed in the ground that never gets any foliage up to receive water or anything, any kind of nourishment at all. But sometimes it's right to turn the other cheek and to not do anything. But this is not one of those times. I'm watching this pastor destroy the flock and teach the wrong narrative and harm everything. So anyways, my point in all this, not to gloat about beating up on a pastor, but however, though, victory won for the people right there. Definitely, you see somebody teaching the wrong narrative. It's a good idea to say that there is another narrative and to let the people hear and to make a big deal about it because then they know you're serious, If you don't say anything, then nobody knows you're serious, nobody knows what you're doing, so it's good to be serious about this kind of stuff. So the conclusion I came to is this, not many pastors actually own their own church in America. The ones that do, they have $8.6 million parsonages, complexes, jets, all kinds of stuff. The ones that own their own churches, and they might even indeed have a chain of churches. Who really knows? Just because a church has a name on it doesn't mean that's the actual name of the church. There could be another name that owns other churches that actually owns the church in secret, along with, same thing with businesses and whatnot, but we've seen these things before. Anyways, and then you have the ones that don't own their own church. So what they do is they prostitute out, right? They sell out to people who can afford to give them a church. So then a church becomes Calvary, or a church becomes First Baptist, or a church becomes Second Baptist. These are just different corporations that own like a chain of churches. So to like get into that corporation and to have them give you the franchise, you have prostituted out to them. And what I mean by this is that we have a fivefold ministry, and it's very clear: apostles first, then prophets. And the reason why these two are first in the fivefold ministry as listed by the Bible is because to become an apostle or to become a prophet, one must be spiritual. To be a pastor or a teacher, it's not necessarily required that one be spiritual. It actually is, but not by our society, it's not. But then we don't have apostles and prophets, very rarely indeed. And that is because it is required for them to relinquish money and worldly desire and to be non-materialistic to become spiritual. And this is the truth. And that is why God listed them first as apostles, prophets. Then it goes on to list evangelists, pastors, teachers, so on. So in the hierarchy, like the apostles and the prophets are first. But what these pastors have done is they don't respond to the apostles and the prophets, because that's the actual ministry of Christ. And they're not in the actual ministry of Christ. They're in the ministry of I need a paycheck. So they sell their congregation, they sell their flocks. You can prove to them they're wrong with Scripture and they won't hear it. Satan just keeps on going through them. And that's because they're not releasing the materialistic things. If they would release the material like Jesus actually said to do, then Satan wouldn't be allowed to work through them. But since they're insistent they must hold on to that thing or those things to be happy, and that the happiness of the Lord isn't enough, this is where Satan is able to work through them. So yeah, pastors are prostituting out the church body. They're selling her, just poisoning the body for one more dollar in the pocket. Anyways, so yeah, just a little moment of revelation today on why this keeps happening to me. You know, like I surely thought that some pastor, I mean, I've searched far and wide, that one pastor would listen, but no, they don't. They all come to the same spot where they want to bully and push you away and close the door in your face. I've been arrested in churches. I've had cops called on me for praying in churches. Just stupid stuff, you know, like, anyways. But that's the conclusion I came to, is that they're not obeying the fivefold ministry, and they're in a counterfeit fivefold ministry, which makes the whole operation bogus and counterfeit. Because in a counterfeit ministry, you're never going to get to the truth, because the truth isn't what's desired. In the counterfeit ministry, what is desired is another paycheck, another dollar. Some of us can live without. 7 years hardcore on the road, and no church will benefit me, take up a love offering for me. No church will help me on my way. And this was the first pastor that I've ever actually spoken out against. But you know what? Enough's enough. I've been poked in the face, in the eye with that stick long enough by these pastors who were just bullying and hiding people from the truth for $1. And it was time to make a stand. So probably much more of this pastor calling out to go on in the future. It was very empowering, because I knew that they were covering my head, and like it released me, because I knew they were lying to the people. You know, and people question my right to do that, but I promise, as a prophet, I have the authority to grab the microphone from a pastor and wallop him in the head really good. But I don't ever go that far. But if somebody bullies me, yeah, I definitely have the ability to stand up for myself and bully back with intent. I do. Anyways, yeah, counterfeit fivefold ministry, prostitution going on inside of the church, selling the fivefold ministry to a prostitute look-alike for a little bit of cash. God bless, beloved. Have a good day.